Have you ever wondered why Antarctica sparks so many conspiracy theories? It's curious. The less we know about a place, the more our imagination runs wild, and Antarctica seems tailor-made for this. It is isolated, difficult to reach, almost no one lives there, and any unusual image becomes a reason for speculation. Some people talk about secret bases. Others swear there are structures buried in the ice. And there's always someone saying that governments around the world are hiding something from that silent continent. But why exactly does all this happen? Are these theories or parts of them true? You'll find out all this and more today. Today, Bello Mundo takes you to this unique place in the world. To start our conversation, we need to state the obvious. Antarctica is unlike anything you've ever seen. And this is evident in absolutely everything. Climate, landscape, wind, light, absence of life. Sometimes it doesn't even seem like this place is part of Earth. In practice, the frozen continent behaves almost like an alien world. Everything that seems exaggerated there is because it really is exaggerated. It starts with the climate. Antarctica is the coldest, driest, and windiest continent on the planet. Yes, all of that together. The lowest temperature ever recorded on Earth was there, an unbelievable minus 128 degrees Fahrenheit. That's cold enough to freeze the air coming out of your mouth. And keep in mind that during summer, in the interior of the continent, the average temperature is still around minus 40 degrees. Near the coast, you could even say it warms up a little. On very specific summer days, some bases have recorded 59 degrees Fahrenheit. But that's the exception. The rule is the freezer running at full blast all year round. And as if the cold weren't enough, it's very windy. And it's not a cold breeze. These are katabatic winds, which descend from the glaciers and easily exceed 62.137 miles per hour. Gusts of over 198.839 miles per hour have been measured in some parts of the coast, which is equivalent to a Category 5 hurricane. Now imagine that blowing snow and crushed ice into the air. It's a freezing storm. And despite all that ice, Antarctica is considered a desert. Yes, a polar desert. Because it's not heat or sand that defines a desert, but the amount of rain or snow. And there, it hardly ever rains or snows. Inland, in some areas, it rains or snows the equivalent of 30 or 40 millimeters per year. That's less than the Sahara receives. In some regions called dry valleys, practically nothing ever falls. The ground is bare, cracked, like a frozen scar in the middle of the white continent. That white, by the way, is deceiving, because most of what we see is not freshly fallen soft snow. It is compacted, ancient ice, accumulated over millennia. About 98% of Antarctica is covered by a permanent ice sheet that is, on average, 1.243 miles thick. In some places, almost 5. That is higher than any mountain in the Alps. Inside this frozen layer is locked away about 70% of all the fresh water on the planet. It's like a white vault. And if all of that melted at once, knock on wood, the ocean level would rise about 164 to 197 feet. We would say goodbye to a good part of the planet's coastline. That's why they say Antarctica acts as the Earth's air conditioner. As long as it remains frozen, it helps balance the global climate. It reflects sunlight with its white surface, cools the ocean currents, and keeps the ocean in place. But any imbalance there has a direct impact here. Another curious point is that no one lives there permanently. Antarctica is the only continent on the planet that has never had a native population. Today, the only residents are scientists and support teams. During the winter, about 1,000 people stay there. In the summer, that number rises to about 4,000, spread across dozens of research bases from different countries. Now think about it. 4,000 people on a continent that is almost twice the size of the United States. That's nothing, don't you think? And even those few people don't live there. They go there, spend a few months, do their work, and come back. There is no continuous life there. Only two bases, one in Argentina and one in Chile, are home to families with small children. But this is more of a political move than a real community, and we'll talk about that later. The rest is just ice, wind, and loneliness. To top it off, you can't go to Antarctica at any time of the year. There is a short window from November to March when the weather is less bad and the sea thaws enough to allow ships and planes to arrive. Outside this period, the continent simply closes. The sea freezes, the sun disappears for months, and no vessel dares to venture there. It's almost like a space mission. Just as NASA waits for the ideal window to send a rocket to Mars, researchers wait for the Australian summer to reach the continent. In other words, if something strange happens on this continent, there won't be many witnesses to tell the story. And then, of course, the imagination runs wild. This whole scenario would be enough to fuel any imagination, but as you will see, there are other reasons that help fuel the mystery. Another factor that fuels theories is that Antarctica does not officially belong to any country, but it wasn't for lack of trying. Several countries have wanted to plant their flag there. 7 of them formally claimed parts of Antarctica throughout the 20th century: Argentina, Chile, the United Kingdom, Australia, France, Norway, and New Zealand. If you look at the map with these claims, it looks like a cake cut into triangular slices, all pointing to the South Pole. The problem is that some of these slices overlap. Argentina, Chile, and the United Kingdom, for example, dispute exactly the same area. Imagine the confusion of 3 countries saying it's mine to the same piece of ice, and this has led to some interesting curiosities. Argentina, for example, decided to make history in 1978. It sent a pregnant woman to Antarctica. She gave birth to Emilio Palma, the first human being born on the frozen continent. It was a political move. The idea was to claim that if we have citizens born there, then that piece of land is ours. Chile did something similar. A few years later, it also sent families to the Frei Montalva base, and another Chilean baby was born there. Today, both Chile and Argentina maintain small villages with schools, chapels, houses, and even a sports court, all to reinforce their territorial presence. Other areas are more peaceful. Australia and New Zealand inherited parts of the old British Empire, so the division there was more amicable. Norway took 2 different pieces, including an isolated island. And there is even an area between 90 and 150 degrees west longitude that no one has ever officially claimed. An empty slice, terra nullius. But if everyone was distributing territory, why didn't it turn into a war? Because in 1959, an agreement was reached that changed everything and became known as the Antarctic Treaty. It was a kind of gentleman's agreement between 12 countries, including the 7 that had already made their claims and other heavyweights such as the United States and the Soviet Union. They basically agreed that no one would give up their claims, but also that no one would try to impose anything. And as long as the treaty is in force, no new claims can be made. The result: Antarctica became a neutral territory dedicated exclusively to science and peace. It is prohibited to build military bases, conduct weapons tests, or install nuclear warheads. In fact, this was the first international disarmament treaty signed in the midst of the Cold War. Quite an achievement considering that the United States and the Soviet Union barely spoke to each other at the time. The treaty came into force in 1961. Today, there are 54 signatory countries, and they all agree with the rule that Antarctica belongs to no one, but also to everyone. For many, this is an example of successful diplomacy, an entire continent without an army, without borders, just research. But for the more suspicious, this is a perfect setup. That's where the theories come in. Some people believe that the treaty is actually a smokescreen, a way to keep civilians away from dangerous discoveries, such as buried cities, frozen UFOs, or secret entrances to underground worlds. None of these theories have concrete proof, but the simple fact that it is an ownerless, inaccessible territory full of geopolitical interest helps to keep the legends alive. The most curious thing is that even with the treaty freezing disputes, countries continue to invest heavily in their bases. Because if one day this agreement is broken or set aside, whoever is already there will want to secure their own slice. And this is not just patriotism. Antarctica holds many valuable natural resources, but that's a topic for later. First, it's worth going back in time and understanding how this continent was discovered. Long before anyone set foot in Antarctica, it already existed in the imagination of many people. The ancient Greeks spoke of a southern land that would balance the weight of the world in the south. And for centuries, European maps showed this mysterious continent as if it were a fact. But no one had seen anything. The first clues began to appear between the 16th and 17th centuries, when navigators such as Amerigo Vespucci and James Cook came close to what we now know to be the Antarctic continent. Cook even crossed the polar circle, but saw no land. He said that if it existed, it would be a horrible place, nothing but ice and desolation. He was absolutely right. Confirmation came in 1820, and the most curious thing is that 3 countries arrived at almost the same time. At the end of January, Russian Fabian von Bellingshausen spotted a mass of land covered with ice. Shortly thereafter, British Edward Bransfield saw the tip of the Antarctic Peninsula. And at the end of the year, American Nathaniel Palmer sailed through the same region. The race was fierce, but in general, the Russians get the credit. Seeing it from afar is one thing. Stepping there is another. The first landing may have been by an American seal hunter, John Davis, in February 1821. He wrote in his logbook that he got off the boat and walked along the coast. It was quick, only an hour. But if true, it counts as the first human step in Antarctica. The problem is that no one knows if he actually saw land or just ice. Therefore, the first confirmed landing only came in 1895 by Norwegians and British. And maybe they weren't even the first. Some Maori oral accounts tell of a navigator named Hui Te Rangiora, who is said to have traveled far south around the 7th century. He describes frozen seas, floating ice, and strange creatures. He may have been talking about icebergs. Maybe not. But just imagining Polynesian canoes sailing through such icy waters more than 1,300 years ago is enough to send a shiver down your spine. What we know for sure is that, at the end of the 19th century, the so-called heroic age of Antarctic exploration began. And it is no exaggeration to call the explorers heroes. These guys risked their lives to map a completely hostile place. At the beginning of the 20th century, the dispute was different. Now the challenge was to reach the exact point of the South Pole. On one side was the Norwegian Roald Amundsen. On the other was the British Robert Falcon Scott. Amundsen bet on sled dogs, experience, and lightness. Scott took ponies, machines, and ended up having to pull everything with human strength. Everyone knows the ending. Amundsen arrived first in December 1111. Scott arrived a month later, saw his rival's flag, and began the return journey, which turned into tragedy. They froze to death a few miles from a supply depot. Curiously, it was not the winner who became a legend. It was Scott, the martyr, the tragic hero. Amundsen, who won and survived, was overshadowed. Perhaps because Antarctica is more suited to dramatic endings than clean victories. Now that we know a little more about this place, let's move on to the part everyone has been waiting for, the truly strange things that Antarctica holds. Because there's no need to invent aliens, there are natural phenomena there so strange that they seem like another dimension. And of course, they generate speculation for all tastes. One of the strangest examples is the so-called blood falls. Imagine a white, icy, silent glacier, and right in the middle of it, a bright red liquid begins to flow, as if the ice itself were bleeding. That's how the scene appeared in 1911, when geologist Griffith Taylor saw it for the first time. For decades, no one could explain exactly what it was. Many people speculated that it could be algae, rust, or even the blood of frozen animals. But the answer came from science, and it is even more interesting. That liquid comes from a subglacial lake hidden inside the Taylor Glacier itself. The water there is extremely salty and rich in iron. As it has been isolated for over 2 million years, it has not frozen completely. When it rises to the surface and comes into contact with oxygen in the air, the iron oxidizes and turns that rusty red color. And most impressive of all, microorganisms that do not need light or oxygen live in this water. An entire ecosystem functioning in extreme conditions under a glacier. Another case that always comes up is the so-called Pyramids of Antarctica. A mountain with 3 almost perfect sides appeared in satellite images and got a lot of people excited. They said it was an ancient construction, proof of lost civilizations, or even an alien base. But scientists quickly explained it. It is a nunatak, a rock formation that emerges from the ice. The triangular shape is just a coincidence caused by wind and ice erosion over millions of years. It may resemble a pyramid, but there is nothing built there. The truth is that our brains love to recognize patterns. When it sees a symmetrical triangle in the middle of nowhere, it immediately connects it to the monuments we know. But in this case, it's just nature sculpting with time and weather. There are also perfectly shaped icebergs that look like they were cut with a ruler. The colorful lights in the sky, which are southern lights. The craters and circles in the ice that make the news, but are just frozen lakes or snow formations shaped by the wind. And of course, there are the classic theories that Antarctica is the edge of the world in the flat Earth model, or that the Nazis built an underground base in the ice. Some of these stories are even based on real events, such as the German expedition of 1938, but most are pure invention. The curious thing is that the real Antarctica already has enough secrets: lakes hidden under miles of ice, fossils of ancient tropical forests, active volcanoes spewing lava in the middle of the snow. All of this is true, and it's more than enough to make anyone suspicious. Now that we understand where Antarctica is, how to get there, what the challenges of the first explorations were, and have even debunked some of the most bizarre myths about the continent, it's time to face what is perhaps the most sensitive point in this story, the part that arouses the most greed, tension, and behind-the-scenes disputes: Antarctica's treasure. And no, we're not talking about lost civilizations or alien technology. The most precious things there are real, tangible, and much more strategic than they seem. What really matters here are very earthly riches that, if ever exploited, could change the game of global geopolitics. Antarctica may hold one of the largest stocks of unexploited minerals on the planet. There is confirmed iron in some areas, evidence of copper, gold, silver, uranium, and even fossil coal. Since the beginning of the 20th century, signs of this have been found in the Transantarctic Mountains. And that's just what's visible. Geologists believe that beneath all that ice there are much larger deposits, even oil and natural gas. But why doesn't anyone exploit all this? Because there is an international agreement that prohibits any kind of mining in the region. It is the Madrid Protocol, signed in 1991, that transformed Antarctica into a nature reserve dedicated to peace and science. This treaty prohibits commercial extraction of resources for at least 50 years, and that period ends in 2048. After that, the countries that sign the treaty may decide to revise the rules, and that's where the geopolitical chess game begins. Several countries maintain scientific bases there as a way of marking their presence. China, for example, has invested heavily. So has the United States. Officially, everyone is there for science, but in practice, no one wants to be left out if the rules change. And even without extracting anything from the ground, Antarctica is already strategic for other reasons. It is an essential piece in the balance of the Earth's climate. It is from there that deep ocean currents originate, helping to distribute heat and nutrients throughout the oceans. It is from there that the dry, clean air comes, allowing for extremely accurate space observations. And it is also there that scientists study the ice to understand what the Earth's climate was like hundreds of thousands of years ago. If the frozen continent falls ill, the entire planet feels it. Antarctica is the world's thermometer, and perhaps that is why it inspires so much respect and also so much ambition. And now, after all this, you must understand why this place sparks so many conspiracy theories, right? Because it's a perfect combination of mystery, a place that is extremely difficult to access, practically uninhabited, governed by a unique treaty, with an extreme environment that hides bizarre phenomena and possibly great buried riches. And on top of that, crucial to the planet. All these elements together seem like the plot of a thriller movie. It's natural for fertile imaginations to create narratives beyond reality. So, did you already know about this place? Tell us in the comments what surprised you the most. And if you enjoyed getting to know this other side of the country, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. If you like the content, leave your like, share it, and of course, don't forget to activate the new hyper feature. This helps the channel gain visibility and continue bringing these unbelievable trips through our beautiful world. See you next time.